What if I told you that a farmer in ancient Egypt worked less than you do right now? That a Roman citizen could get a full meal, a bath, and free entertainment all in one afternoon? And that in ancient China, a government exam could take a poor farmer's son and turn him into one of the most powerful men in the country? For thousands of years, humans have been waking up, going to work, eating, arguing with their neighbours, and going back to sleep, just like we do today. But how they did it? That's where it gets interesting. Today we're travelling through 5 ancient civilizations to answer one simple question. What did an ordinary day actually look like? Not the pyramids, not the wars, the stuff in between. The waking up, the working, the eating, the surviving. Let's get into it. Segment 1. Ancient Egypt, circa 2600 BCE. Picture the Nile at sunrise. A farmer wakes before dawn, because in Egypt, the entire calendar revolves around one thing: the flood. Every year, the Nile overflows its banks and deposits rich black soil across the fields. Egyptians even called their land Kemet, the Black Land, because of it. When the water was high, farmers couldn't farm at all. So that season, many of them worked on royal building projects instead. Yes, that includes the pyramids. Contrary to the myth, these weren't slaves dragging stones under the whip. They were paid labourers, fed bread, beer and onions, working in rotating shifts organised like a workforce, not a punishment. Once the flood waters receded, it was time to plant. Farmers used wooden ploughs pulled by oxen, then scattered seed and let pigs and sheep trample it into the soil. Bread and beer were staples of almost every meal. Beer was so central that workers were sometimes paid in it. Family life centred on the home, usually a simple mud brick house with a flat roof used for sleeping in the heat of summer. Board games like Senet were common evening entertainment, and the Egyptians believed the outcome could even hint at your fate in the afterlife. Segment 2. Ancient Greece, circa 450 BCE, Athens. Let's jump to Athens during its golden age. An Athenian man's day usually began early, heading to the agora, the central marketplace, not just to buy goods, but to talk. Politics, philosophy, gossip. The agora was basically ancient social media, except you actually looked people in the eye. If he was a citizen, he might spend part of his day in the assembly, voting directly on laws. Democracy wasn't a metaphor here, it was a several hours long civic duty. Meanwhile, women in most households managed the home, wove cloth, and rarely appeared in public spaces the way men did. Athenian society kept a strict division between the male-dominated public sphere and the female-run household. For entertainment, there was the gymnasium, not just exercise, but a place for wrestling, conversation, and education for young men. In the evening, wealthier citizens might attend a symposium, a structured drinking party with music, poetry, and debate, always with wine mixed with water, since drinking it straight was considered barbaric. Meals were modest by our standards: bread, olives, cheese, fish when available, because Greek soil wasn't great for large-scale grain farming, which is part of why Greek city-states relied so heavily on trade and colonization. Segment 3. Ancient Rome, circa 100 CE. Now to Rome, a city that, at its peak, may have held over 1 million people. A Roman's day started shockingly early, often before sunrise, since the wealthy held a morning greeting, where clients visited their patrons for favours, advice, or money. This patron-client system was the backbone of Roman social life. By midday, most business wrapped up, because afternoons were for the baths. The bathhouse wasn't just about hygiene, it was where deals were made, gossip spread, and news travelled through a rotation of hot rooms, cold plunge pools, and steam chambers. Roman apartment blocks, called insulae, housed most ordinary citizens, cramped, often fire-prone buildings that could rise several stories high. Because so few homes had proper kitchens, many Romans ate out at small food counters called thermopolia, essentially ancient fast food. Entertainment ranged from theatre to chariot races at the Circus Maximus, which could hold hundreds of thousands of spectators. And yes, gladiator games were real, but they were more occasional spectacle than everyday activity. Most Romans spent far more time at the baths and marketplace than at the arena. Segment 4. Ancient China, circa 100 BCE, Han Dynasty. Finally, to Han Dynasty China, where daily life often revolved around one powerful idea: order. A farmer here rose with the sun to work rice paddies or wheat fields, depending on the region, following a strict agricultural calendar tracked by the imperial court itself. The government even issued almanacs telling farmers the best days for planting. For ambitious families, the real dream wasn't farming, it was the civil service exam. The Han Dynasty expanded a system where men, regardless of birth, could study Confucian texts and test into a government position. It wasn't a perfect meritocracy. Wealthy families still had huge advantages, but it cracked open a door that most ancient civilizations kept firmly shut. Homes were often built around a central courtyard, and family structure was deeply hierarchical, guided by Confucian values: respect for elders, duty to family, and a clearly defined social order. Meals centered on grains, rice in the south, wheat and millet in the north, often eaten with vegetables and occasionally meat, using chopsticks that were already a well-established tool by this time. In the evenings, families might gather for storytelling, and market towns buzzed with silk traders, since the Han Dynasty saw the rise of the Silk Road, connecting China to Central Asia, Persia, and eventually Rome itself. So there it is. 4 civilizations, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart, and yet the pattern repeats. Wake up, work the land or the trade, eat something simple, gather with family or neighbors, rest, repeat. The pyramids, the Colosseum, the Great Wall, those are the headlines. But the real history of humanity was written in these ordinary days, over and over, by people who never knew they'd be remembered at all. If you learned something today, subscribe, because next time we're going even further back, to civilizations most people have never even heard of.